good evening, everyone. I'm back. I'm Chelsea Ohlemiller with Grief and Goodbyes, and I am super excited for our guest tonight, Shanice McLeish, and she is an Atlanta-based owner of Grieving It, and her work is to, like all of our missions, are helping grieving hearts and helping people navigate through the grief journey. She has a brand new book, which is amazing, and it is dedicated to children and their grief experience. It is called Grief on the Playground, and I am so excited to welcome Shanice tonight.
Hi, Chelsea. Hello, everybody in this wonderful family. It is an honor to be here, and I thank you so much for having me.
Oh, thank you so much. And like I tell everybody, we will go at the end of our programming tonight. We will put all of Shanice's, her website, how to purchase her book, all of her resources that she has, which are just amazing on her work that she's doing out of Atlanta. And you guys can become familiar with her work. And then also, if you have any questions tonight, comments, anything you'd like us to talk about, put it in the comment section, and we'll be going through that as we see some pop up. So welcome, everybody. Welcome, Shanice. So for those that don't know you and the work that you're doing, and I also love your sweatshirt because she sells those on her website if you like it. So tell us a little bit about your story, your grief journey, and what led you here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Chelsea. I would say grief started for me really at an early age. I was 8 years old when my father died suddenly in a car accident. Growing up since then, I did not learn a single word about what grief is or how to grieve or you should grieve until I was maybe 17, 18 years old. So that's a 10-year difference.
Right.
It was really hard growing up, but I had great family, great support physically, mentally, emotionally. And really, what really characterized as my grief journey is just losing that battle, losing my father at a young, critical age of my life, and not really knowing what direction was going to be for me following next. When I moved to Atlanta following my dad's death, I really started volunteering with a nonprofit organization here that really caters to children and their families grieving in Atlanta, as well as, just taking time and doing extra opportunities with this organization and creating programs myself for these kids and learning how to grieve on my own. And that really helped me and opened up my eyes to what grief was and that I should have been doing this 10 years ago. And I didn't have the opportunity or the knowledge to know or how to get there.
Yeah.
So with my volunteering, it really frustrated me that adults spoke a lot for children, and I've witnessed that in my entire life, about how they should feel that their loved one is gone or what it's like for them, what is their experience. We weren't able to communicate or advocate for ourselves.
Right.
And I really, really, really deep in my heart wanted to be a voice for that child that was just like me, that allowed somebody to speak for them or said something that didn't really think about how they would feel in a situation and just really advocate for them. Like, no, they have feelings and their feelings are big and grief is big. And it's something that we need to sit down and talk about because the more, as you know, the more we push things down, the harder it's going to get.
Yep. Absolutely. Well, I think you bring up such a good point. And even, our experiences are extremely different as each grief journey is. I lost my mom much older, I was in my 30s, but my children lost their grandmother too. And just what you said made me realize I even do a lot of, my work is grief. I do grief work. And I don't know if I've ever sat down and talked to them about that word or told them that is what's happening with them. They're mourning or they're grieving. And so you bring up a really good point, and it seems so simple, but we talk about the sadness and the ache and the longing and all of those things, but really just saying to a child, like, this is grief, like you said, like nobody ever said that to you. And so just you saying that, how should we do that as parents? What's your advice for that? Because that seems like such a simple thing, but I've never thought about it before.
Absolutely. And I I think it's so important because I know for a child being 8 years old and the age that I was losing having gone through a profound loss in my life, having someone there to ask questions because if you just ask a child, Chelsea, how are you? Are you okay? Yes. In our mind, yeah, we're fine. We're going to respond, yes, we're okay because we're not dead.
Right.
And
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's what every child out there is thinking.
Yep.
I'm not dead and I'm okay. I'm alive.
Yep.
Once they've experienced such a close loss to them. And I think the best way to go about it is acknowledging that it's going to be hard and that the conversation is not going to be easy, but really saying right out, it sucks because grief sucks. Grief
Yep.
is an ugly monster, but it's something that every single person faces and deals with in different ways. And without a simple question that I can say is a good starting place is, how are you feeling?
Mm-hmm.
And it can be as simple as that.
Yep.
And I think, Chelsea, one of my main drivers and main focus with writing Grief on the Playground, which is this wonderful storybook right here,
It's
is
beautiful.
thank you. It's really to present an opportunity for an adult to have a conversation with a child about their own grief.
Yes.
So deep in the storybook, the concept is a young girl, her name is Ava, just lost her father to cancer, as well as the other main character is a teacher, Miss Johnson. So it really breaks down the barriers between a student and a teacher. When you think of children spend most of their time with their teachers, if not most of them their parents,
Yep.
all day throughout the school year, and teachers are very influential in their growth and development and mental growth, I would say. And having those conversations and having a educational tool that points out, this is what I'm going through.
Yep.
I do experience the grief roller coaster, and this is how I feel. I can point to a picture and say, I'm here on this grief roller coaster today.
Yeah.
And it's really a great tool to use to start the conversation, to not if you're not ready to speak about the conversation, you can let a book speak for you. You can let the character speak through you. And I think that it's a great place to start.
Absolutely. I think it's so beautiful. I was a teacher before I ever started writing, and I taught kindergarten. And
Oh,
unfortunately, I had a student who lost a mother. And it was, I mean, it was earth shattering just as a teacher, and back then I still had my mother. And I just love that you've created this because it's not just for families, it's for teachers. And I mean, in the world that we're living in, we're seeing loss all the time, especially with COVID and cancers and all of these things that are really, taking people we love from us. And I just think it's a beautiful way to bring that conversation in that so many people have shied away from, but we really need to embrace it because our children are grieving. There is grief in our classroom walls. And I think it is just this brilliant piece of literature that also will create these conversations. And I just think it's such a beautiful thing. And I love the roller coaster because I've talked about that a lot, and it's something very visual for a child to know, oh, okay, it's exciting, it's scary, it's all of these things. So how did you come up with that portion of the book that talks about the roller coaster of grief?
roller coaster of grief has been, first off, thank you. Thank you for all those kind and warm comments. It really has been a project, a masterpiece, and an art from my heart.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I feel that. That's how all my stuff is, but it's not even in a book form. So I can't, I mean, you just have to be so proud of this. Yes.
I am very proud. The roller coaster identity really came about because grief to me is an actual roller coaster, and it is something that I've said throughout the years, something that I've learned throughout the years of my own grief, and we hear it so often,
Mm-hmm.
and it deserves to be highlighted at the rate that it is.
Yep.
Mhm.
And, so the first time that when my mom passed away, and it had been 6 months, and somebody from hospice, I think he was a preacher or, somebody in the religious community called, and I didn't recognize the number. I answered. Long story short, he said, Chelsea, I'm calling because it's been 6 months since your mom passed away. And just hearing those words was a shock. But then he said, I call to check up on people because I've learned that grief is like riding a roller coaster in the fog. He said, because you can never see the dips and the highs and the lows. And I thought, oh my God, like not only is it a roller coaster, but it is a roller coaster in the fog because you don't know when to anticipate the falls and the rises and the, the big dips versus the low dips. And so when I saw that your book had that, kind of analogy of the roller coaster, I thought, oh my gosh, it's so true. And it's so easy for kids to understand that. So that's where my connection with it came, because that was one of the first things anybody was ever really talking about grief where I was like, yes, you're right. That is what it's like, So I don't know if you've ever heard that, but
I have never heard that, and when I tell you, Chelsea, it just rang in my heart. I love that. It is so true. And I feel like when we think of going on a roller coaster ride, for myself, I hate roller coasters
yeah.
because I feel very anxious. I know that I'm not going to be able to breathe. As
Yep.
I know other people can't breathe. I just feel like the fact that I can't breathe is just like a no.
Yep. Yep.
And there's moments that I'm not sure what's going to happen next. There's loops, there's turns, there's all of these non-exciting but kind of exciting things.
Yep. And
And
you're
when
not navigating, you're in zero control.
that is absolutely it. You are in zero control. And you mentioned earlier, you were saying how it is important to normalize these conversations. And that is what Grieving It, the heart of Grieving It, is really about, having the ability to normalize grief throughout a single conversation. And I love the fact that on the merchandise that we sell, it says normalize grief. And I tell you, I get so many calls from people that I know just in passing or in the grief world that says, I was stopped in the store and I had to have a conversation because somebody was intrigued and they wanted to know why is normalized grief a thing? And you hear so many stories that come out of, I was stopped in the store, I was at a cash register, I was in the grocery store, about somebody that recently lost someone or just lost someone in their life that they loved and that they were struggling. And this was a mention to them that, yes, it's okay, that you're not alone. And that is what my hope is for Grieving It and for normalized grief.
Yeah, I love that. And it's just that, we talked about it on Monday with my other guests, just that ripple effect of, you came with this purpose and this mission, and it's just trickling down everywhere. I mean, like, I'm in Indiana, you're in Atlanta, it's just, you never know how far your message and your words and your mission are going to go. And I mean, you're proof of that. So I love that. Yeah, I was checking out your store today. I was like, I got to buy all these things, especially just so I can wear them. I need to be on brand too and support your cause. So,
Awesome.
but
Thank you.
tell everybody a little bit more just about Grieving It and some of the resources that you guys offer and some of the things that you do, because your work is, a bright light. So tell us more about that.
Thank you so much. It's so funny you say that. I have been dwelling on a song that I've heard today in the post office, and it's from a reggae artist. Her name is Leela Ike, and her song says, when you do things in love, the only thing that people will see is the light that shines through you. So thank you for saying
Oh,
that.
that's beautiful. Yeah.
And I agree. That is exactly what Grieving It is to me. It's an extension of my heart, and for no gain. I don't want any gain. I don't want anything for it. I just want a space for people to know that they're not alone in their grief.
Mm-hmm.
People who feel alone, because it's the worst thing. We can all be sad, but the worst thing is to be alone and sad.
Yep.
And once you know that there is someone out there fighting the same tears, holding back, just like you, it makes us feel a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I really wanted everything that I offered and grief resources just for anyone to grab and take. So I have free grief resources on my website that cater to children, that cater to adults, because when I first started Grieving It, I really only thought of it and mentioned for children grief awareness because I was a child and that was my experience. But being in this grief community, I recognize that adults need it just as much as children.
Mm-hmm.
And those adults that need it had those experiences in their current life, in their past ages, and we all struggle with it. So why not, make it broad? There's things in there from coloring sheets to little activities for children to journal topics for adults, just something that they can do that's mindless, and it allows them to have a break and really just to get into their feelings and get into their emotions to acknowledge what's there.
Yeah, absolutely. So I will, going back a little bit to, what started it all and what started Grieving It was essentially your grief experience. And so when we go back to those times for you, well, nobody really called it grief or said those things, but what did that look like in your family? How did people act around you, and what did the grief look like within your family unit and with those supporting you? And how did you use that to decide, let's do something a little bit bigger and better? Because not that they don't want to, but just so everyone can be better equipped, if that makes sense.
Absolutely. Yes, yes, it does. Growing up for me, it was really, really different. I come from a West Indian household and Hispanic household, so you get a lot of culture, a lot of everything in there. I was born and raised in Miami, Florida,
Okay.
and I relocated to Atlanta, Georgia a year after my father passed away. So I would say I would say this, I grew up in Miami, Florida, only because I feel like mentally I had to grow there. I
Mm.
lost my dad there. It was really big. It was an experience, and once you lose a parent, you have to grow up. You don't have
Yep.
any other choice. You're kind of forced into that. So, seeing grief and seeing that journey through my family, we have a really, really big family. It was very different for everyone.
Mhm.
I would say today, my mom and my dad both had two children, and my sister and I, we grieved very differently. I was more open, and she was not as open as I. And we're still on this journey trying to figure it out for ourselves and to see what that really looks like for the both of us. Um, and it really going through, I didn't have much support. I had support from my family, of course. We all loved my dad and we all cared about him. On certain days, we'll enjoy a dinner over him, visit his grave, all of those good things, homey feels, share stories, share videos. I had support in that area, but emotional support for me was not there. I didn't allocate therapy, which I'm a huge component for now.
Yep, me too. Mhm.
Absolutely, or any mental health specialist, because it's really a game that you have to get in there yourself.
Mhm.
And it really turned for me that I want a child to have a better experience than I had. And that was my driving force. And offering these different things that I know children can do, or I know that it's not hard to do. You just need somebody that's willing to do it with you and to be there with you.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely. So what would you say is one of the biggest takeaways for people that you work with, for families that you work with, when someone shows up and says, this accident has happened, or we lost somebody unexpectedly, what's the first go-to that you give them as advice to say, start here, do this first? Do you have any advice
Absolutely.
for?
Sure thing. I would say the first thing that I always say is just make sure that you do not overwhelm, because in the beginning stages, the overwhelming and people are coming in and out, but let them know that you are there in the way that you and their relationship stands, that you are there. If that means I can run errands for you, pick up groceries for you, I can just sit with you on the floor drinking a glass of wine, we can do all of those things, but really know who is at the end of that disaster or that catastrophe in their life, because they're really going through it. And the love and the support that you can give them will mean everything to them. And I
Absolutely.
think the first thing I would say is just be consistent with them, because we all know a couple weeks, a couple months after the death has happened, those are the hardest times for people. And it continues on throughout their journey, but consistency and making sure that you are there for them in the way that you show up in your relationship with that person is the most important thing.
Absolutely.
Mm.
Yes, it's just such a different experience, I think, when it is a child and somebody young, because I feel like the world has this, children are resilient, and that's what you hear all the time. And
Absolutely.
I always say, yes, you're right. Children are resilient, but they're still grieving. Like, I mean, I just did a reel on this like a couple of weeks ago, and I don't know what happened on Instagram, but it has like 90,000 views or something insane. But it proved to me that nobody talks about child grief, whether it's a
Mhm.
parent, a sibling, whoever. And people think that kids just snap back because they might be pretending to snap back, but they still have those feelings. So what's
Absolutely.
kind of your opinion on that when, do you feel like the world is like, I don't know if it's just me, but do you feel like the world is like, oh, kids are resilient, so they don't need as much help. Like they're going to be fine, you know?
That is my life story. That is at me next time, Chelsea,
Yeah,
because
I'm
it's
going
me.
to. Yeah.
It was exactly my sister and I. I'm gonna speak for myself because we have different experiences, but we were high achieving children. We got good grades, A's and B's in the house only. We both went to college, graduated a few times, both of us. My sister
Nice.
is, doing great things in the world, and so am I. And that's why everybody thinks we're okay.
Yep.
That is why everybody thinks didn't have the opportunity to check in with us when we were younger because we didn't make any issues. We didn't Our grades didn't slip, we didn't act out, we didn't do any of those things.
Oh my
And
gosh.
it's
Yeah.
for the children that are great children, they're still experiencing that.
Yes. Just
Mhm.
like you said, success does not mean stability, like
Absolutely.
your daily ability to continue on and keep stepping forward does not mean you're not having inner battles, as a child. And so, yes, I was wondering what your thoughts were on that because, it,
Chelsea, I cringe.
oh, yeah.
I cringe when people say children are resilient, they will be fine. Oh, my favorite one that I hate people to say, they're not gonna remember.
Oh, no, people say that?
I do not
Oh,
care if a child is 4 months old, 1 year old, 3 years old. They each and this is scientifically written and proven that it is and and for adolescents and different age groups, yes, their memories don't correlate with grief, but at the same time, they recognize the shift that has happened in their household. If
yes.
they recognize the energy that has shifted, say the father unfortunately passed away and a mother and a sister is remaining. When the mom holds that baby, that's a different feeling. The child feels all of that. They
Yes.
might not know what caused it because their minds are too young to grasp it, but no one can tell me that this child is not gonna remember.
Yes. And I wouldn't want them to. I wouldn't want them to forget because, of course, when there's trauma involved, if someone saw a very traumatic event, I'm not speaking of those things, but I wouldn't want them to forget the loss ever because then they're forgetting the love or the relationship or the special connection, whatever it was. Wow. Yeah. I guess I've never heard someone say that, luckily, because I would probably start crying just because I would think, well, if they forget the loss, then they're forgetting everything else too. And that would just be detrimental.
Mhm.
Oh, I hate that you've heard that. Sometimes you just want to like take things back. You're like, oh no, they didn't mean it. So, but that's another point in grief is that people say things that are hurtful and that sting. And I really try to always say, people mean well, and I think their heart is in the right place. But also, until you've experienced a deep loss, you really don't know how to navigate through one. And so it would be hard for you. I know as an adult, for me, I felt much more empathy and compassion and all of those things shift when, my mother passed because I noticed the hurt that was out in the world. And so I don't know if you felt it quite at 8, but do you think that your grief experience, as it braided itself intricately into everything you did, do you feel like that has eventually just created you to be this much more empathetic feelings person?
Yes, I do. I feel like you are reading me out of a book, Chelsea. And I appreciate the read. I normally say that my dad's loss, it really taught me how to love
Mhm.
deeply, um, pressured me to spend more time with my friends and family and to show that love and to be in that love. But more importantly, it allowed me to learn empathy and be empathetic towards people. And I've always felt that since his death. I've always felt that you don't understand what's happening. Everybody has their own story.
Mhm.
Every day, we're all living how many different lives in a single day. And you have to show love. You have to love on people because they might have had the roughest and toughest day.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Yes. And I love one of the things that I don't, Glennon Doyle is one of my favorite like authors of all time. And I saw her speak years and years ago, and she talked about how parents sometimes and people in general, have this like hot potato, game almost. And they have this hot potato, and that grief or pain is kind of like this hot potato, and everybody just wants to pass it along and not let it stay. And I found that especially true in like navigating through my children's loss. At first, I just wanted to take it away or, cover it up or minimize it or, and then finally had to say, okay, mine's not going away. Theirs is not going away. We've got to deal with this head
Hmm.
on. And so do you see that a lot with the people that you work with and the community that you're in for this, child grief section?
I think, yes, I see that now more often only because we're seeing grief so much. It's
Mm-hmm.
everywhere that we turn. Every time we turn on the TV, the numbers just keep skyrocketing because of this pandemic that we're in. And I think the conversations are being had now.
Absolutely.
Previously, before COVID-19, I wouldn't say that with such confidence.
Absolutely. I
Mhm.
agree. I agree. I think that it took, when the pandemic first started, I had friends that would say like, I don't know what I'm feeling, when everything shut down and you couldn't work and you couldn't do this. And I said, that's grief, that's grief. It might be a different kind of grief, but it's grief. And so I do agree that the world has finally collectively felt it. And now we have to talk about it. So, but Erica said that once you feel such a great loss, it really shapes how you approach others' grief or sadness. I completely agree.
That is
And
so true, Erica.
yes. And I think it's this community of people that are so compassionate and kind and really just try to do great in the world are the people that have known significant loss. So I definitely think that. So, well, I definitely want to thank you for your time, and we can I want to show your book again and talk a little bit. Yes. So Grief on the Playground. And if we can purchase it on Amazon, I will put all the links in there. Target, Barnes and Noble, anywhere that you buy your books. If you have a little mom and pop bookshop, make sure that you go in and ask, because they can order it just as easy. Support those local places. And definitely, I will put all of Shanice's contact in the comment section for all of you guys. But any last, advice, encouragement? What do you have for us?
I would say first, thank you. And yes, I my only vision and my only hope from this night is that whoever is listening, everybody that is tuned in and will tune in, will know that this thing is not it's not easy.
Yep.
And as long as you are connected with people, you have to be connected with the right people in your life to get over and to get through this navigating this journey. And I just want you to know that keep staying connected with people that really encourage you in your grief and allow you to be yourself and do all the good things. Chelsea, you're doing such amazing things, and I really
Oh,
encourage your family at Happiness, Hope, and Harsh that they're really staying connected with you because you are doing amazing work. And the people that really inspire you to grow through your grief and to give those little pushes, they're really needed in your life, and just to love on that a little bit more.
Yes, absolutely. And I say the exact same about you. I just think that you have created this painful part of your life and you've created such a purpose that is meaningful. And it's like I said before, it's changing lives that you don't even know. Like you can't see the people that are buying your book and reading it to their children or bringing it to their classroom or, their church or wherever, you don't get to see all of the ways that your work is out in the world. And I can just tell you that it's a beautiful, beautiful tribute to your story and your work. And I'm just so honored that I came across it and that we had this time to chat because it's been great.
Chelsea, I am not crying. You are. Thank you
I
so
cry all the time, so it's fine.
Me too, but thank you so very much. That really it means a lot, and it's not about for me, it's really not about anything that comes from this. It's really about this is my good deed to the world, and I know that this is something that has to be here, and I just pray that it lands in the hands of everyone that needs it.
Yes.
And
Well,
I
and I
will
will
work my butt off to get that.
Yeah, I will keep telling people and I will be
Thank
reminding them
you.
because you're exactly right. It needed to be out there and it's going to be brilliant. And I don't even think we mentioned, but it just came out in September. So this is like brand spanking new, people. So make sure you look for it and look at the Normalized Grief merch that she has on Grieving It. And because it's not the only color, there's all kinds of colors, there's mugs, there's all kinds of stuff. Trust me, I already kind of have a cart going, but don't tell my husband. So, but yes, so if you guys think of any other questions or comments, put them in the comments and we'll get through those tonight, tomorrow, and as the days come. Thank you to everyone for being here, and thank you, Shanice.
Thank you, everyone. It was a pleasure, Chelsea. You are amazing, and I can't wait to do it with you again.
Yes, we have to collaborate again. Good night,
All right.
everyone.
Bye, everyone. See you soon.